Welcome to the channel. My name is Chris, and today we're going to be looking at Brown Eyed Girl by Van Morrison. So in this lesson, I'm going to show you all the chord shapes you need to know, the best way to transition between the chords. We're going to look at a great strumming pattern for the verse and a good variation for the chorus. And of course, we're going to be looking at that iconic intro. So before we get started, make sure to give this video a thumbs up if you find it helpful, and subscribe to the channel because that really helps support me, grow the channel, and you won't miss another lesson. So let's start with the chord shapes. In this song, we're going to have a G major. We're going to have a C major. We have a D major. Those are really the three main chords. And we're also going to have a D7. Now, you don't have to play the D7. You know, if you're just starting out and you're just looking to add a song to your repertoire, you can play the D major, that's fine. But the D7 does help you get that sound on the record. The only other chord we have is E minor. So let's talk about the actual chord progression, and then I'll show you the strumming as well. The chord progression for the verse, we're going to play this 2 times. So we have G, C, G, D, G, C, G, and then I go to that D7. So that sounds really good on the record. You're basically alternating between G, C, G, D, and G, C, G, D7. Okay, now going from G to C is not a super simple transition at the beginning. If you're a more advanced player, you might be thinking, oh, this is so simple, right? I do this all the time. But you beginning players know the struggle of making the transitions, right? You learn the shapes, and then it is very hard to just suddenly snap to another chord. So the best way to do that is to really think about what you're doing, right? Like think about what your fingers are actually doing. Your first and second finger are kind of linked here, and they're gonna travel together to go to the C chord, while your ring finger pulls up towards us, right? Towards the lower strings, like that. Now, G going to D, I think, is a great transition for beginning guitar players, especially when you use the 4-finger voicing like this, because your ring finger doesn't have to move at all. Your ring finger stays planted, your middle finger comes down towards the floor, right, to the high E, and the index finger stays on top, just like that. So that's an easier way to make these transitions. G going to D, leave the ring finger down. It's really nice to have a pivot finger, okay? So let's talk about the rest of the verse. We did the G, C, G, D, G, C, D7. You play through that 2 times. And finishing off the verse, it's a long verse with the structure of this song. There's no pre-chorus. It's just sort of like a long verse that goes into the chorus. Now, what that looks like is C, D, G, E minor, C, D, G, and then we have a few bars of D. Right, that kind of leads us into the chorus. And then we're going to go into that chorus. So let's talk about the main strumming pattern that you could use for the entire song. And this is one that will apply to many songs, honestly. It's a great one for beginners, especially. So that pattern looks like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, down, down, up, down, 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 up, down, 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 up, down, 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 up, down, up. And you'll notice, down, down, up. I'm still doing a down, but I'm just not playing in that spot there. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and down, down, up, down, up, down. See? And there's different terms for that. Sometimes it's referred to as ghost strumming, where your hand's still making the motion, and that just helps it sound smoother, but you're not actually hitting the strings. If I don't do that, you might end up with this kind of stabbing motion coming up. So if you're having trouble with up strums, keeping that hand moving is going to be the best thing that you can do, just to kind of help that smoothness in the strumming hand. Again. leads us into the chorus. G, C, G, D7, G, C, G, D7, and then we're going to hang on G. So now let's talk about that second half of the verse that leads us into the chorus. We have a difficult transition, which is C going to D. Right? That is not easy to do, or C going to D7. That's actually an easier transition, and that's more of what I hear on the record. So after you play the G, C, G, D twice, you have C, D7, G, and E minor. Right? So there's a couple transitions to work on. C to D7 is not so bad when you think about the first finger being shared on that C note here, the 7th of the D7. Not as bad when your first finger can pivot back and forth like that. Harder to go from C to D, but again, one of the main tricks here, of course repetition is going to do this for you, the muscle memory. When you look at guitar players like me or anyone else on here, or when you see people play live, we're able to form these chords very quickly from doing this for years. So with practice that will happen, of course, right? So C going to D. Don't stress out too much if you have muted notes. It really doesn't matter at this point. The point is that you just want to have fun doing this so that you continue to do it, so you don't give up, right? C, going to D7. G, well, you know, your pinky and ring are kind of here, and your first and second are linked together, so they just kind of split. You know, I think of the G chord as sort of my hand being split. Okay, my first and second finger on their own here, they're already kind of in position. So is that. Watch this move here. D7, G. That's a super common move. Now, G going to E minor, pretty simple. You have two choices. You can use a pivot finger. Again, your first finger is already on that second fret of the A string. So you could go G to E minor like that. Right? And that also sets you up for the C chord. When you're going from E minor to C, well, now your middle finger serves as a pivot finger. Okay? E minor to C. Look at that, the ring finger's already there. So this is entirely up to you whether you want to use the pivot finger. That is sometimes very helpful for beginners to get smoother transitions. You may see a lot of players, including me, play E minor like this with my second and third finger, middle and ring, right? That's just because we're so used to doing it that way. So using the pivot finger is entirely up to you. So the strumming pattern for the chorus, you can variate it a little bit, and I'll show you what that sounds like. 1, 2, 3, 4, down, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down, up. So I'm really bouncing back and forth between the bass strings and the higher strings. So that just gives you a little variation for the chorus, but you can absolutely keep that initial strumming pattern going throughout the entire song. So finally, let's look at that really cool intro melody. Now, we're in the key of G, so it's really based around G major. Right? That's sort of the first thing, and you're just harmonizing it with a voice underneath. Right, so when you put that together, that's what we're left with. We have the higher voice playing the 3rd, 5th, and 7th fret on the high E string. And I would start by just playing the single note instead of trying to group those together. Again, that's 8, 10, 12 on the high E string, or C, D, E, G, A, B, C, D, E, D, C. Going to that 2nd fret, the F sharp, which, as you know, is that high note on the D7. So that's why it sounds really cool. The lower part, we have 4th fret here on the G. Like that, that's the lower voice. So when you combine them, and I'm using my fingers to kind of play it. The only reason I like to do that is because I can get a little more bite out of it, especially balancing that thin high E string with the bass note. However, you can pick that. The hard part is just using a finger to mute it out, so you probably want your first finger there to kind of touch the B string slightly. You know, it'll be a little harder to get a clean sound. So I definitely like to use my fingers. Keep your hand nice and relaxed when you're doing that, and make sure that you're not bending that string, altering the pitch. Keep it nice and smooth. So that should be enough to get you through this song. And I really recommend learning this one because a lot of people know it. And if you're at a party, you're in a place where there's a guitar, this is a great one to pick up and get a group of people, start moving around and singing along. As always, be sure to check out my Patreon page. If you want to have access to the interactive notation synced with my playing, downloadable PDFs, access to the group chat, and a lot of general structure for weekly lessons. Thank you so much for watching. It was great to have you, and I'll see you in the next one.